Attention decides everything. What you notice, what you ignore, what you become. Your life follows your attention. Not your intentions. Not your effort. Most people lose control quietly. One distraction at a time. One reaction at a time. This audiobook is about reclaiming attention. Not through force. Through discipline. Attention is finite. Power follows it. Where attention goes, control follows. Lose it, and life decides for you. Train it, and you decide. Attention determines outcomes. Not talent. Not intention. Attention. What you attend to shapes how you think. How you think shapes how you feel. How you feel shapes how you act. This chain runs constantly. Whether you notice it or not. That's the key. Attention is training your nervous system every moment. Most people believe power comes from effort. From pushing harder. From doing more. They are wrong. Effort without control scatters. Action without attention destabilizes. You are not failing because you lack strength. You are failing because your attention is unmanaged. You have a choice. You can keep letting attention drift. Or you can start directing it deliberately. Most people do the first without realizing it. They wake up and immediately look outward. Messages. News. Noise. Their nervous system is trained into reaction before the day even starts. This is not awareness. It is conditioning. Whatever you attend to repeatedly becomes familiar. Familiar becomes comfortable. Comfortable becomes default. If you attend to urgency, you become rushed. If you attend to conflict, you become reactive. If you attend to distraction, you become fragmented. This is not philosophy. It is mechanics. The nervous system adapts to what it is exposed to. That's the key. Attention is not neutral. It trains. Most people think attention is passive. Something that just happens. It is not. Attention is in action. Even when you do nothing else. When you look, listen, scroll, or replay thoughts, you are acting. And every action has consequences. You attend to your phone dozens of times a day. Your nervous system learns interruption. You attend to constant updates. Your system learns urgency. Then you wonder why stillness feels uncomfortable. It's not a flaw. It's training. It's not about motivation. It's about discipline. Discipline decides where attention goes when impulse tries to take it. You don't need their permission to control your attention. You do not need approval to look away. You do not owe your focus to every demand. Most people surrender attention out of habit. Not necessity. They respond because something appears. They engage because something feels urgent. They react because something pulls. Pull is not command. That's the key. Just because something grabs attention does not mean it deserves it. You have a choice in every moment of awareness. You can stay. Or you can redirect. Redirection is power. When you redirect attention, you interrupt conditioning. You break automatic loops. At first, this feels uncomfortable. The mind resists. The body wants stimulation. This resistance is not a signal to stop. It is proof that attention has been uncontrolled for a long time. Stillness exposes this clearly. When there is nothing pulling attention, you feel the urge to look. To check. To escape. That urge shows you how trained your system is. Stillness is not passive. It is diagnostic. It shows you where attention goes when nothing forces it. Most people avoid stillness because it reveals weakness. Restlessness. Impulsivity. Mental noise. Avoidance keeps those weaknesses intact. Attention trained only by stimulation cannot hold under pressure. Pressure amplifies whatever you have trained. If you trained distraction, pressure produces panic. If you trained urgency, pressure produces rash action. Power comes from trained attention. Trained attention holds. This is why calm people appear powerful. Not because they care less. Because their attention is stable. Stability is the advantage. You cannot control emotion without controlling attention. Emotion follows. Focus. If you focus on threat, fear rises. If you focus on offense, anger rises. If you focus on lack, anxiety rises. Change focus. Emotion shifts. That's the key. Attention precedes emotion. Most people try to control emotion directly. They suppress it. They fight it. That fails. Emotion is a downstream effect. Attention is upstream. Control upstream. Downstream stabilizes. It's not about eliminating feeling. It's about choosing what feeds it. You have a choice. You can keep feeding agitation. Or you can start feeding clarity. Clarity comes from deliberate focus. This means deciding, in advance, what matters. Not in the moment. Before. Moments are emotional. Standards are calm. When you decide ahead of time where attention belongs, you remove negotiation. Negotiation drains energy. Standards preserve it. For example, you decide that when tension rises, you pause. You decide that when distraction appears, you return to task. You decide that not everything deserves mental space. These are attentional rules. Rules protect power. You don't need their permission to enforce them. You do not need to explain why you are not reacting. Silence is allowed. Most people talk themselves out of control. They justify distraction. They rationalize reaction. You stop doing that. You notice where attention goes. You notice what pulls it. Then you decide. Decision is power. Stillness gives you the space to decide. Without stillness, attention is always captured by the loudest signal. Loud is rarely important. Important is often quiet. That's the key. If you cannot stay still, you cannot hear what matters. Training attention starts small. You do not try to control everything at once. You choose moments. One task. One conversation. One period of silence. You hold attention there. When it drifts, you bring it back. Not with force. With discipline. Again. And again. Each return strengthens control. This is how attention becomes trained. Not through insight. Through repetition. Repetition creates familiarity. Familiarity creates stability. Over time, your baseline changes. You feel less pulled. Less rushed. Less reactive. Not because life slowed down. Because your attention stopped scattering. This is real power. Power that does not announce itself. Power that does not depend on mood. Power that holds under pressure. Most people chase productivity. They should chase attentional stability. Stable attention produces clean action. Clean action produces results. Results follow attention. That's the key. Your life is the sum of what you repeatedly attend to. If you attend to distractions, you build a distracted life. If you attend to clarity, you build a controlled life. You have a choice. No one else can make it for you. You cannot outsource attention control. You must practice it. Daily. Quietly. Deliberately. This chapter is about awareness. Not awareness as observation only. Awareness as responsibility. You are responsible for what you attend to. That responsibility is not a burden. It is leverage. When you accept it, control begins. Without awareness, attention runs wild. With awareness, it becomes directed. Directed attention is power. This is the foundation of everything that follows. You learned that attention determines behavior. You learned that it trains your nervous system. You learned that power begins with awareness. Now you must confront the main reason attention is lost. Distraction. Most people do not lose attention. They give it away. Quietly. Repeatedly. Without noticing. Every notification you check. Every interruption you accept. Every impulse you follow. Each one is a decision. That's the key. Attention loss is usually voluntary. You are not being attacked constantly. You are opening the door. Most people believe distraction is unavoidable. They blame technology. They blame work. They blame other people. That is convenient. And false. You have a choice. You can keep handing attention over. Or you can stop giving it away. Giving attention feels harmless in the moment. A quick glance. A short reply. A brief scroll. But attention does not return instantly. It fragments. Fragmentation weakens control. Weakened control increases reactivity. Reactivity creates instability. This is the pattern. You do not lose power in dramatic moments. You lose it in small ones. That's the key. Power leaks. It is rarely stolen. Most distractions are invitations, not demands. They ask for attention. They do not require it. You treat them as obligations. You respond immediately. You switch tasks. You break focus. Then you wonder why thinking feels harder. It's not about lack of ability. It's about lack of discipline. Discipline means deciding what does not get attention. You don't need their permission to ignore something. You do not need approval to delay a response. You do not owe instant access to your mind. Instant access is expensive. Every time you give attention away, you pay with clarity. Clarity is required for good decisions. Without it, emotion fills the gap. Most people think distraction relaxes them. It does not. It keeps the nervous system alert. It prevents settling. Settling is where focus stabilizes. You are training your system to expect interruption. Expectation becomes habit. Habit becomes identity. You become someone who cannot stay with one thing. Not because you are incapable. Because you trained distraction. You have a choice. You can continue training distraction. Or you can begin training restraint. Restraint is not deprivation. It is selection. You decide when attention moves. Not impulse. This starts by noticing patterns. When do you check automatically? What pulls you fastest? What interrupts you most often? Observation precedes control. Stillness makes observation possible. When you slow down, you see how often attention tries to escape. That escape is not necessity. It is discomfort avoidance. Discomfort appears when attention holds. Holding attention reveals boredom, resistance, mental noise. Most people flee here. They give attention away to escape the feeling. That's the key. Distraction is often emotional avoidance. You are not tired. You are uncomfortable. Comfort is not the goal. Control is. It's not about pleasure. It's about discipline. Discipline stays when comfort disappears. You practice by delaying response. Not ignoring forever. Delaying deliberately. A message arrives. You pause. An urge to check appears. You wait. Waiting breaks the reflex. The nervous system learns a new rule. Impulse does not equal action. Each pause strengthens that rule. At first, this feels unnatural. The urge pushes harder. That is conditioning fighting back. You do not obey. You stay still. Stillness is not passive. It is an active refusal. Refusal builds authority. Authority over attention changes everything. You stop feeling pulled. You stop feeling rushed. You stop feeling scattered. Not because demands disappeared. Because you stopped answering everything immediately. Most people fear missing something. They fear falling behind. They fear being perceived as unresponsive. Those fears are exaggerated. What you lose by constant distraction is greater. You lose depth. You lose judgment. You lose presence. Presence is power. You don't need their permission to protect it. Protecting attention also means removing temptations. If access is constant, discipline must fight constantly. Fighting is inefficient. You change structure. Notifications off. Devices away during focus. Define times for checking. This is not extreme. It is intelligent. Structure reduces decision load. Decision load drains attention. Reducing it preserves power. That's the key. Less decision equals more control. Most people think they need more tools. More apps. More systems. They need fewer inputs. Subtraction restores order. Order allows focus. Focus allows effective action. Effective action reduces stress. Stress often comes from fragmentation. Not from workload. You can work hard and remain calm. If attention is stable. You cannot work calmly when attention is constantly divided. Division creates tension. You have a choice. You can continue reacting to every pull. Or you can decide where attention belongs. Deciding once is easier than deciding constantly. You set rules. When you respond. When you ignore. When you focus deeply. Rules protect attention. Without rules, impulse wins. Impulse is not evil. It is automatic. Automatic behavior must be constrained. Constraint creates freedom. Freedom from distraction. Freedom from reactivity. Freedom from mental noise. This chapter is about responsibility. Not blame. Responsibility. You are responsible for where your attention goes. No one else can guard it for you. When you accept that, control returns. You learned that attention is power. Now you see how easily it is surrendered. Next, you must learn how to choose what is allowed in. Not everything deserves access. Not everything deserves access. Most people let attention in without screening. They absorb whatever appears. Thoughts. Opinions. Noise. They confuse openness with awareness. That mistake costs control. Attention is a gate. What passes through shapes your internal state. If the gate is always open, stability disappears. That's the key. Control starts at the gate. You have a choice. You can let anything enter your mind. Or you can decide what is allowed. Most people never decide. They react. A headline appears. They read. A message arrives. They respond. A thought surfaces. They follow it. This is not awareness. It is submission. Every stimulus that enters trains your nervous system. It teaches the system what matters. It teaches the system what to prioritize. If you feed it urgency, it learns urgency. If you feed it conflict, it learns reactivity. If you feed it distraction, it learns fragmentation. This training happens whether you approve of it or not. That's the key. Attention trains by exposure. Most people think they can consume anything and remain unaffected. They cannot. The nervous system adapts to input. If you allow chaotic input, internal order weakens. Choosing what enters is not avoidance. It is discipline. Discipline means you decide before the moment arrives. You don't wait to feel overwhelmed. You set standards in advance. You don't need their permission to filter input. You do not owe your attention to every voice. You are allowed to ignore. Ignoring is not ignorance. It is selection. Selection preserves clarity. Clarity supports control. Most people feel mentally crowded. Too many thoughts. Too many concerns. Too many emotional signals. They think they need better thinking. They need fewer inputs. The mind is not designed to process everything at once. It is designed to focus. Focus requires exclusion. Exclusion feels uncomfortable at first. You worry about missing something. You worry about falling behind. Those worries are exaggerated. What you gain by filtering is greater. You gain space. Space allows observation. Observation allows choice. Without space, everything feels urgent. Urgency removes choice. That's the key. When everything feels important, nothing is controlled. You begin choosing by noticing. Notice what enters your mind repeatedly. Notice what pulls attention fastest. Notice what lingers longest. These patterns show you where control is weak. Stillness helps you see this. In quiet moments, you notice what thoughts rush in. Old concerns. Imagined problems. Replayed conversations. These are not random. They are trained loops. You do not fight them. You do not analyze them. You decide whether they deserve entry. Decision is power. Most people assume thoughts are commands. They are not. Thoughts are invitations. You can decline. Declining does not require force. It requires refusal. You let the thought pass without engagement. That's the key. What you do not engage with loses strength. Engagement feeds growth. This applies externally and internally. Externally, you choose what information you consume. Internally, you choose which thoughts you follow. Both matter. If you filter external input but follow every internal impulse, control is incomplete. You practice refusal in both directions. Externally, you limit exposure. You reduce unnecessary updates. You step out of draining conversations. You stop consuming information that adds agitation without value. This is not apathy. It is strategy. Internally, you limit engagement. A worry appears. You acknowledge it. You do not rehearse it. A judgment appears. You notice it. You do not escalate it. This creates distance. Distance restores authority. It's not about emotion. It's about discipline. Discipline decides what receives attention. Emotion tries to bypass the gate. It demands entry. You slow the process. Slowing creates choice. You don't need their permission to slow down mentally. You do not need approval to stay silent inside. Silence is a boundary. Boundaries protect stability. Most people believe boundaries are external. They are also internal. Internal boundaries determine which thoughts are allowed to stay. Without boundaries, the mind becomes noisy. Noise reduces precision. Precision requires quiet. That's the key. Quiet reveals what matters. When you reduce input, something becomes clear. Many things you thought were important fade quickly. They only felt urgent because they were loud. What remains is simpler, clearer, actionable. This simplifies decision-making. Simpler decisions reduce stress. Stress often comes from excess information, not from complexity.
Choosing what enters also improves emotional regulation.
Emotion spikes are often triggered by specific inputs. Certain conversations, certain content, certain thoughts. When you reduce exposure, spikes reduce. Not because you suppress emotion, because you remove triggers. This is intelligent control. You do not train emotional strength by constant exposure. You train it through selective exposure. Just like physical training. Too much weight breaks form. Proper load builds strength. Attention works the same way. You must control load. That's the key. Discipline controls load. Most people overload their attention constantly.
Then they blame themselves for fatigue.
Fatigue is not failure. It is feedback. The system is overloaded. You respond by reducing input, not by pushing harder. Stillness is how you recalibrate.
In stillness, you feel the difference between necessary input and excess.
You sense when attention is stretched too thin. You adjust. Adjustment is calm. No drama. No self-criticism. You simply close the gate. You have a choice. You can keep absorbing whatever appears. Or you can decide what shapes you. What shapes you determines how you act. How you act determines outcomes. This chain begins at the gate. If you want different outcomes, change what enters. Not occasionally. Consistently. Consistency builds a new baseline. Over time, your mind feels less crowded, less reactive, more stable. This is not because life became easier. Because attention became selective. Selective attention is power. Power does not mean domination. It means direction. Direction requires choice. Choice requires space. Space is created by refusal. This chapter is about authority. Authority over what shapes you. Without this authority, attention is constantly captured. Captured attention cannot be directed. Directed attention is the foundation of control. You learned that attention is power. You learned how easily it is given away. Now you understand that power returns when you choose what enters. Next, you must deal with what makes choosing difficult. Noise. Constant noise. Noise weakens attention. Not loudly. Gradually. Constant sound. Constant updates. Constant input. The nervous system never settles. Most people live inside this without noticing. Music playing. Videos running. Notifications arriving. Background commentary filling every gap. They think it helps them stay engaged. It does the opposite. That's the key. Noise trains distraction. When input never stops, attention never rests. When attention never rests, control erodes. You feel it as restlessness, as impatience, as the urge to check something. This is not a personality trait. It is conditioning. You have a choice. You can keep feeding noise into your system. Or you can start removing what weakens you. Silencing noise is not isolation. It is precision. Not every sound deserves access to your nervous system. Not every update deserves mental space. Noise accelerates thinking. It pushes emotion forward. It shortens your tolerance for stillness. That makes regulation harder. When the system is already stimulated, small triggers feel larger. Reactions happen faster. Judgment arrives later. This is why people overreact in loud environments. The system is already taxed. Stillness repairs this. Stillness is not passive. It is corrective. When noise drops, internal signals become clear. Breath. Tension. Thought speed. These signals guide control. Noise hides them. Most people avoid silence because it feels uncomfortable. Thoughts surface. Feelings rise. They assume something is wrong. Nothing is wrong. What you are feeling is backlog.
When noise is constant, unresolved thoughts pile up.
Silence brings them forward. That discomfort is temporary. It is the system recalibrating. That's the key. Silence feels difficult because it is necessary. You don't need their permission to reduce noise. You do not owe constant engagement. You are allowed to turn things off. Turning things off is not withdrawal. It is maintenance. Maintenance keeps systems functional.
A mind without maintenance degrades.
Silencing noise starts externally. You remove unnecessary sound during work. You limit background media. You stop filling every moment. At first, attention rebels. It looks for stimulation. It reaches for the familiar. This is habit, not need. You do not obey. You stay with the quiet. Staying builds capacity. It's not about comfort. It's about discipline. Discipline stays when comfort disappears. Over time, something changes. The urge to check weakens. Thoughts slow naturally. Attention settles without force. This is not accidental. It is adaptation.
The nervous system adapts to quieter conditions.
When baseline stimulation drops, emotional spikes shrink. Reaction time increases. Choice returns. Choice is power. Noise also includes informational clutter. Endless news. Constant opinions. Perpetual updates. Most of it does not improve decisions. It agitates. Agitation feels like awareness. It is not. Awareness requires clarity. Clarity requires quiet. You do not need to know everything. You need to think clearly about what matters. That's the key.
More input rarely equals better judgment.
Most people confuse being informed with being effective.
Effectiveness comes from integration.
Integration requires space. Space is created by silence. You also silence social noise. Not every conversation needs participation. Not every emotional exchange needs engagement. Some interactions drain without adding value. You reduce exposure calmly. No explanations. No arguments. Distance is a tool. Distance restores perspective. Perspective supports control. You don't need their permission to disengage temporarily. You do not need approval to protect your internal state. Your internal state determines your effectiveness. Weak inputs weaken effectiveness. Silencing them is strategic. Stillness also retrains attention. Without constant stimulation, attention learns to stay. To hold. To deepen. This is foundational. You cannot build sustained focus in a noisy environment. Noise fragments attention. Silence consolidates it. Consolidated attention supports regulation. Regulation supports discipline. Everything connects. You have a choice. You can keep flooding your system. Or you can lower the volume deliberately. Lower volume increases signal. Signal guides action. Action becomes deliberate.
When noise reduces, time feels different.
Moments stretch. Urgency fades. This is not inefficiency. It is accuracy. Urgency is often manufactured by noise. Remove the noise. Urgency loses power. What remains is what matters. This simplifies decisions. Simpler decisions reduce stress. Stress often comes from excess input, not from workload. You can work hard and remain calm. If attention is protected, you cannot remain calm while constantly stimulated. Stimulation keeps the system reactive. Stillness resets baseline.
Baseline matters more than peak moments. If your baseline is calm, spikes are manageable.
If your baseline is noisy, spikes overwhelm. That's the key. Baseline determines resilience. Silencing noise also improves recovery. Sleep deepens.
Mental fatigue decreases.
Emotional regulation improves. These effects compound quietly.
You feel steadier without trying harder.
This is efficiency through reduction. Most people try to add solutions. More tools. More content. More stimulation. They should subtract. Subtraction reveals structure. Structure holds attention. Attention holds power. You don't need perfection. You need consistency. Short periods of silence daily. Protected. Intentional. Not as relaxation. As training. You sit without input. You walk without audio. You work without background noise. You allow the mind to operate without constant interference. At first, it feels exposed. Then it feels stable. Stability is the goal. This chapter is about environment. Not external circumstances. Internal conditions. You shape internal conditions by controlling inputs. When inputs weaken, discipline strengthens. When discipline strengthens, attention holds. When attention holds, power becomes usable. You learned how to choose what enters. Now you understand why noise makes that difficult. Remove the noise. Choice becomes easier. Next, you must learn how to hold attention deliberately once the environment is quiet. Quiet creates opportunity. Discipline must use it. Attention does not hold itself. Left alone, it drifts. It searches for stimulation. It looks for relief. Most people accept this as normal. They believe focus is fragile by nature. It is not. It is untrained. That's the key. Attention is not weak. It is undisciplined. You have a choice. You can continue letting attention wander. Or you can train it to stay. Staying is the skill. Most people try to force focus. They tense up. They push harder. They rely on bursts of motivation. That approach fails. Force creates resistance. Resistance shortens endurance. It's not about intensity. It's about discipline. Discipline keeps attention in place when motivation fades. Holding attention deliberately starts with simplicity. One task. One direction. One period of time. Anything more divides the mind. The mind does not handle division well. It fragments. It loses depth. Depth is where power is built. When attention stays on one thing, processing deepens. Clarity increases. Judgment improves. Most people never experience this consistently. They leave too early. The moment discomfort appears, they switch. They check. They escape. That escape trains weakness. Discomfort is not danger. It is the threshold. That's the key. Discomfort marks the point where training begins. When you stay past the urge to leave, attention strengthens. This applies to work, to listening, to thinking. Staying builds capacity. At first, attention will resist. Thoughts will intrude. Impulses will appear. This is expected. You do not argue with them. You do not follow them. You return attention to the task. Again. And again. Returning is the practice. Perfect focus is not required. Consistent return is. Each return reinforces control. This is how the nervous system learns stability. Most people quit because they expect immediate calm. They believe focus should feel smooth. It does not at first. It feels effortful, restless, unsettled. That feeling is not failure. It is adaptation. You are undoing years of distraction training. That takes time. You don't need their permission to work without interruption. You do not need approval to protect focus time. You do not need to explain your boundaries. Focus requires defense. Interruptions reset attention. Each reset costs energy. Energy lost must be rebuilt. This is why multitasking feels exhausting. It is not productivity. It is controlled fatigue. You cannot harden attention while constantly reopening it. Holding attention deliberately means reducing exits. You remove notifications. You silence inputs. You close unnecessary tabs. This is not extreme. It is necessary. Structure supports discipline. Without structure, attention leaks. Holding attention also means choosing duration carefully. Too short, and training is weak. Too long, and fatigue overwhelms. You start with manageable blocks. Long enough to feel resistance. Short enough to finish cleanly. Completion matters. Finishing teaches confidence. Abandoning teaches avoidance. You finish what you start. That's the key. Completion stabilizes attention. Over time, you extend duration gradually. You do not rush this. Capacity builds through consistency. Daily practice matters more than long sessions. You are training a system, not proving strength. Stillness supports this training. When external noise is low, attention holds longer. When emotional pull is reduced, focus deepens. Everything you have learned so far supports this chapter. Silence removes interference. Filtering removes overload. Regulation removes emotional hijack. Now attention can be trained directly. You have a choice. You can keep working in fragments. Or you can build sustained direction. Fragments feel busy. They produce little. Sustained attention feels quiet. It produces results. Results follow depth. Depth follows staying. Most people underestimate how rare staying is. The ability to remain with one task, without escape, separates those who control outcomes from those who react to them. Attention held deliberately becomes predictable. Predictability builds trust. You begin to trust yourself to focus. You stop doubting your ability to stay. That trust reduces anxiety. Anxiety comes from instability. From not knowing if attention will hold. When attention is reliable, pressure feels lighter. This is power. Not loud power. Quiet power. Power that comes from consistency. It's not about speed. It's about accuracy. Accuracy requires sustained attention. You cannot see clearly if attention keeps moving. Holding attention also changes how you relate to boredom. Boredom appears when stimulation drops. Most people flee here. They mistake boredom for uselessness. Boredom is simply absence of novelty. Beyond it lies depth. If you stay, boredom fades. Engagement replaces it. This transition is critical. That's the key. Most people never pass the boredom barrier. They leave too soon. You do not. You stay. This builds endurance. Endurance allows you to work calmly under pressure. To think clearly in complexity. To listen without interrupting. These are practical advantages. Holding attention deliberately also applies internally. When thinking through a problem, you do not jump ahead. You stay with one line of thought. When emotion appears, you do not abandon focus. You regulate, then return. This integration matters. Attention is not just external. It is internal as well. Where your thoughts stay determines mental clarity. Most people let thoughts scatter. They chase each idea briefly. They never reach resolution. Resolution requires staying. Staying allows insight. Insight is not sudden.
It emerges from sustained attention.
This is why deep understanding is rare. It requires patience. Patience is disciplined stillness. You have a choice. You can keep seeking stimulation. Or you can build tolerance for depth. Tolerance for depth changes identity.
You begin to see yourself as someone who can stay.
Who can hold focus? Who can resist escape? Identity reinforces behavior. Behavior reinforces identity. This loop stabilizes attention. Over time, holding attention becomes easier. Not because you try harder. Because the system has adapted. Adaptation is the goal. Discipline creates adaptation. Motivation fades. Adaptation remains. That's the key. Train what lasts. Holding attention deliberately is not glamorous. It is quiet. It is repetitive. But it compounds. Small daily practice builds large capacity over time. This capacity carries into every area of life. Work improves. Conversations deepen. Decisions sharpen. Because attention is no longer scattered. Scattered attention produces scattered results.
Directed attention produces alignment.
Alignment reduces friction. Reduced friction conserves energy.
Energy conserved supports control.
Everything returns to attention. This chapter is about execution. Not theory. Not insight. Practice. You practice staying when you want to leave. You practice returning when attention drifts. You practice finishing without escape. You do this calmly. Without self-criticism. Without drama. Correction is quiet. Each correction strengthens discipline. You do not aim for perfection. You aim for consistency. Consistency builds reliability. Reliability is power. You learned how to silence noise. Now you have learned how to use the quiet. Quiet creates opportunity. Discipline turns opportunity into strength. Next, you must address what quietly undermines attention even when you are focused. Fragmentation. Small leaks that break depth. Emotion competes for attention. It pulls. It demands. It insists on movement. Most people mistake this pull for instruction. They feel something. They act. That is how control is lost. Emotion is information. Not command. That's the key. Feeling does not equal action. You have a choice. You can let emotion decide where attention goes. Or you can detach and choose deliberately. Detachment is not suppression. It is separation. You feel the emotion. You do not merge with it. Most people merge instantly. They identify with the feeling. They speak from it. They act from it. This fusion collapses judgment. When emotion leads, attention narrows. Options disappear. Urgency increases. Detachment restores distance. Distance restores choice. Stillness creates that distance. When emotion rises, the body reacts first. Breath shortens. Muscles tense. Thought speed increases. If you act here, you act blind. You pause. This pause is not hesitation. It is leadership. You regulate the body before you move the mind. Slow the breath. Lengthen the exhale. Release the jaw. Lower the shoulders. These actions stabilize the system. That's the key. Regulate the body. Attention settles. Once attention settles, emotion loses leverage. The feeling is still present. But it no longer drives. You don't need their permission to pause internally. You do not owe immediate expression. Silence is allowed.
Most emotional mistakes happen because people rush to discharge feeling.
They want relief. They want release. Release feels good briefly. Then consequences arrive. Detachment trades relief for control. It's not about comfort. It's about discipline. Discipline delays action until clarity returns. Emotion peaks quickly when not fed. It rises. It crests. It falls. Reaction feeds the peak. Stillness lets it pass. That's the key. You do not eliminate emotion. You outlast it.
This requires practice.
Start with low stakes. Minor irritation. Impatience. Small disappointment. These are training moments. You feel the pull. You pause. You do nothing. Not forever. Just long enough to regain authority. At first, the urge to act intensifies.
The body demands movement.
The mind searches for justification. This is conditioning. You do not obey.
Each time you hold still, tolerance increases.
Tolerance is strength.
Over time, emotional impact feels lighter.
Not because you feel less. Because you are less moved. Most people believe control means being cold. Detached. Unfeeling. That belief is false. Detachment is not numbness. It is accuracy. Accuracy requires distance.
When you detach, perception widens.
You see more. You hear more. You decide better. Emotion without distance distorts perception. Anger narrows focus to offense. Fear narrows focus to threat. Excitement narrows focus to reward. All of these bias attention. Detachment corrects the bias. It's not about emotion. It's about discipline. Discipline decides when emotion is consulted. And when it is ignored. You do not argue with the feeling. You do not suppress it. You observe it. Observation changes the relationship. When you observe emotion, intensity drops. This is physiological. The nervous system calms when action is delayed. Delay is a tool. You don't need their permission to delay response. You do not need approval to remain calm. You are allowed to wait. Waiting is active. It allows structure to engage. Structure cannot operate while emotion is in command. This is why sequence matters. Regulate. Observe. Then decide. Never reverse this order. If you decide while activated, discipline is bypassed. Most people try to think their way through emotion. They analyze. They rationalize. That fails. Thinking while activated is distorted. You stabilize first. Then you think. That's the key. Stability precedes clarity. Detachment also applies internally. Thoughts surge with emotion. Judgments appear. Stories form. You do not believe the first thought. You pause there as well. This is anger. This is fear. This is frustration. Labeling creates space. Space breaks fusion. Fusion is when emotion and identity collapse into one. When fused, emotion decides. Detachment prevents fusion. You are not the feeling. You are the observer of it. This distinction changes behavior immediately. You stop escalating situations. You stop regretting words. You stop replaying moments. Because fewer mistakes are made. Mistakes come from acting while fused. Detachment breaks the fuse. You have a choice. You can continue letting emotion capture attention. Or you can let attention remain steady while emotion passes. One leads to volatility. The other leads to consistency. Consistency builds trust. Trust in yourself. Trust in your timing. When you trust your ability to remain composed, fear loses leverage. You stop rushing to prove something. You stop reacting to protect image. You stop discharging feeling to feel better. You hold position. Holding position is power. Not visible power. Functional power. Stillness is the advantage here. Stillness is not inaction. It is containment. It contains emotion. It contains urgency. It contains impulse. Contained systems do not break. Uncontained systems do. Detachment also improves focus. When emotion stops pulling attention sideways, focus holds longer. This supports everything you have trained so far. Silence reduces noise. Filtering reduces overload. Deliberate focus builds endurance. Detachment protects these gains. Without detachment, emotion reopens old exits. Shacking. Switching. Reacting. You close those exits by staying still. That's the key. Stillness protects structure. Most people fear that detachment will make them passive. Invisible. Weak. The opposite happens. Calm presence unsettles reactive people. Measured responses de-escalate conflict. Delayed action improves outcomes. You gain leverage by not moving. You do not need to win every moment. You need to maintain control. Control is maintained through restraint. Restraint is a skill. Like any skill, it improves with repetition. You practice detachment daily. In conversations. In work. In private thought. Each pause strengthens the habit. Over time, detachment becomes automatic. Emotion still appears. But it no longer hijacks. This is reliability. Reliability creates confidence. Not loud confidence. Quiet certainty. Certainty that you will not betray your standards under pressure. This certainty stabilizes behavior. Stable behavior produces stable results. This chapter is about leverage. Leverage over internal states. Without this leverage, attention will always be pulled off course. With it, attention remains usable. You learned how to hold attention deliberately. Now you have learned how to keep emotion from stealing it. Next, you must address what quietly breaks focus even when emotion is controlled. Fragmentation. Small switches. Unfinished loops. Hidden drains. Fragmentation destroys depth. Not suddenly. Gradually. Attention breaks into pieces. Thinking becomes shallow. Judgment weakens. Most people live in this state without realizing it. They switch constantly. Tasks. Thoughts. Inputs. They call it productivity. It is not. That's the key. Fragmentation feels busy. But it produces little. You have a choice. You can keep allowing attention to split. Or you can begin restoring wholeness. Fragmentation happens whenever attention is pulled in multiple directions. You start one task. You stop midway. You check something else. You return partially. Each switch leaves residue. Residue is mental noise. Noise reduces clarity. Clarity is required for control. Most people underestimate this cost. They think switching is harmless. They believe they can jump back easily. They cannot. Every switch taxes the nervous system. Fatigue follows. Fatigue increases reactivity. Reactivity breaks discipline. This is the chain. Fragmentation also comes from unfinished loops. Things you started but did not finish. Decisions you delayed without closure. Problems you replay mentally. The mind keeps these active. Even when you are not thinking about them directly. Background load drains attention. You feel it as pressure. As restlessness. as vague anxiety. That's the key.
Unfinished loops leak energy.
Most people respond by adding stimulation. They distract themselves. That worsens the problem. The solution is closure. You either finish the task,
or you capture it clearly.
Writing closes loops. When something is written with a next action, the mind releases it.
You don't need their permission to slow down and finish properly.
You do not need approval to complete before moving on. Completion restores integrity. Integrity stabilizes attention. Another major source of fragmentation is multitasking.
The mind does not multitask.
It switches. Fast switching feels efficient. It is not. Switching fractures attention. Each fragment holds less power. Power requires concentration. Concentration requires staying.
Staying feels uncomfortable at first. The urge to switch appears quickly.
The mind seeks novelty. Novelty feels relieving. Relief is not progress. It's not about stimulation. It's about discipline. Discipline keeps attention in place when novelty tempts. You practice by enforcing sequence. One task at a time. Start. Finish. Then move. No overlap. No checking midstream. This feels slower initially. It is faster long term. Switching costs time you never see. Staying builds momentum. Momentum protects focus. You also eliminate fragmentation by reducing entry points. Every open app. Every active notification. Every background input. Each one is a potential switch. You close them deliberately. This is not extreme. It is maintenance. Maintenance prevents breakdown. You have a choice. You can let your environment fragment attention. Or you can structure it to support depth.
Structure reduces temptation.
Temptation drains energy. Reducing temptation preserves discipline. That's the key. Remove the need to resist. Fragmentation also happens internally. Thoughts jump topics. Concerns overlap. Ideas interrupt each other. This internal switching feels like thinking. It is not. It is noise. You correct this the same way. You stay with one line of thought. When another thought appears, you note it. You do not follow it. You return to the original thread. This requires stillness. Stillness slows thinking enough to notice switches. Without stillness, switches happen automatically. Stillness is not passive. It is stabilizing. It allows attention to settle into one place. When attention settles, thinking deepens. Deep thinking produces insight. Insight does not come from rapid switching. It comes from sustained contact. Most people never experience this. They leave too early. They mistake restlessness for inefficiency. Restlessness is simply the mind unused to staying. You retrain it. Again. And again. Each time you resist switching, fragmentation weakens. This is training. You do not need perfection. You need consistency. You will switch sometimes. That is normal. The discipline is noticing quickly and returning. Return restores wholeness. Wholeness strengthens attention. Strengthened attention supports everything else. Emotion regulation becomes easier. Focus holds longer. Decisions improve. Because the mind is no longer scattered. Scattered minds struggle under pressure. Whole minds hold. That's the key. Pressure reveals fragmentation. When things get intense, fragmented attention collapses. You lose track. You rush. You react. Whole attention stabilizes under pressure. It holds one priority at a time. This is why elimination of fragmentation matters. Not for productivity. For control. Control requires coherence. Coherence is attention unified. You achieve coherence by enforcing sequence. One task. One thought. One action. This simplicity is powerful. Most people complicate their lives by splitting attention. They try to hold everything at once. That is impossible. You reduce. Reduction is strength. You decide what matters now. Everything else waits. Waiting is not neglect. It is order. Order protects energy. Energy supports discipline. You have a choice. You can continue scattering attention. Or you can restore unity. Unity changes how you feel. Calmer. More present. Less rushed. Not because life is easier. Because attention is intact. This chapter is about repair. Repairing the damage caused by constant switching. Repairing the habit of partial attention. Repairing internal noise. When fragmentation decreases, stillness becomes natural. Stillness no longer feels empty. It feels stable. Stability allows clarity. Clarity allows decisive action. This is the progression. You learned how to detach from emotional pull. Now you understand how fragmentation undermines attention even when emotion is regulated. Next, you must learn how to pause before action. Not as delay. As leverage. Action without stillness is reaction. Most people move too fast. They act while activated. They decide while pulled. They confuse speed with effectiveness. That confusion costs control. That's the key. Action taken without stillness is rarely accurate. You have a choice. You can keep moving the moment something happens. Or you can build stillness before action. Stillness is not delay. It is preparation. Preparation determines outcome. Most mistakes happen in the first seconds. Not because the situation is complex. Because the system is unsettled. An unsettled system cannot decide well. Stillness settles the system. When something triggers you, the body reacts first. Heart rate rises. Breath shortens. Muscles tighten. If you act here, you act blind. You pause. This pause is not hesitation. It is structure engaging. Stillness gives structure time to activate. That's the key. Structure cannot lead if stillness is skipped. Most people believe they think before acting. They do not. They feel. Then they justify. Justification is not thinking. Thinking requires space. Space comes from stillness. You don't need their permission to pause before acting. You do not owe immediate response. Silence is allowed. Stillness is a trained behavior. At first, it feels uncomfortable. The urge to move pushes harder. The mind demands resolution. That urge is conditioning. You do not obey. You stay still long enough for clarity to return. Clarity always returns if you wait. Emotion peaks quickly. Then it fades. Urgency fades with it. What remains is signal. Signal guides correct action. Stillness separates signal from noise. Noise shouts. Signal is quiet. If you move immediately, noise decides. If you pause, signal emerges. That's the key. Stillness reveals what matters. Most people fear that pausing will make them miss something. Or look weak. Or lose control. The opposite happens. Pausing increases control. Others rush. You stabilize. Stability creates leverage. Stillness also applies internally. A thought appears. A judgment forms. A plan rushes forward. You pause there too. You do not act on the first thought. You do not follow the first interpretation. First thoughts are often emotional. Second thoughts are clearer. Stillness allows the second thought to appear. You have a choice. You can act on impulse. Or you can wait for clarity. Clarity improves outcomes. This does not mean you wait forever. Stillness is brief, deliberate, intentional. Seconds matter. Those seconds determine whether action is reactive or controlled. Most people skip this because they are uncomfortable with silence. Silence exposes uncertainty. Uncertainty feels threatening. But uncertainty handled calmly is power. It means you are not pretending to know. You are observing. Observation precedes decision. Decision precedes action. Reverse that order and mistakes multiply. It's not about confidence. It's about discipline. Discipline respects sequence. Sequence creates reliability. Reliability creates trust. Trust in yourself reduces anxiety. Anxiety comes from unpredictability. Stillness makes your behavior predictable to you. You know you will pause. You know you will assess. You know you will decide deliberately. This certainty stabilizes your internal state. Stillness also slows escalation. Many conflicts escalate because both sides move immediately. Reaction meets reaction. Intensity multiplies. Stillness breaks the loop. When one side does not react, escalation stops. You gain control without force. This is strategic advantage. Stillness also improves listening. If you pause before responding, you hear more. You catch details. You notice tone. This improves judgment. Judgment improves action. Action improves results. Everything improves when stillness comes first. You don't need their permission to let moments breathe. You do not need approval to wait before speaking. Waiting is allowed. Stillness must be practiced intentionally. You practice it in low-stakes moments. Minor frustrations. Small delays. Interruptions. These are training opportunities. You feel the urge to act. You pause. You breathe. You observe. You do nothing else. At first, the pause feels long. Then it feels normal. Then it feels necessary. This is adaptation. The nervous system learns that action is not required immediately. Urgency loses power. Over time, stillness becomes automatic. You no longer have to remind yourself. The pause happens on its own. This is training completed. Stillness then shows up under pressure. When stakes rise, others rush. You pause. That pause creates clarity when it is needed most. That's the key. Stillness scales with pressure. The higher the pressure, the more valuable the pause. Most people reverse this. They move faster as pressure rises. That guarantees error. You slow down instead. Not externally. Internally. Externally, action may still be fast. Internally, it is calm. This distinction matters. Calm speed is precision. Panicked speed is chaos. Stillness produces calm speed. Stillness is not inaction. It is control before movement. Movement without control is waste. Stillness also protects attention. When you pause, attention does not scatter. It gathers. Gathered attention supports decisive action. This ties directly to the core theme. Attention is power. Stillness is how attention is gathered. Without stillness, attention leaks into impulse. With stillness, attention concentrates. Concentrated attention produces leverage. Leverage changes outcomes. You have a choice. You can keep reacting quickly. Or you can pause deliberately. One feels productive. The other is effective. Effectiveness matters more. This chapter is about leverage. Leverage gained by waiting seconds before acting. Those seconds separate reaction from response.
They separate impulse from discipline. They separate chaos from control.
Stillness before action is the hinge point. Everything else depends on it.
You learned how to eliminate fragmentation.
Now you know how to prevent new fragmentation from forming. Pause first. Then move. Next, you must make this process automatic.
So stillness does not depend on effort.
So control holds even when you are tired. Control should not require effort. If it does, it will fail when you are tired.
When pressure rises.
When emotion spikes. That's the key. Effort fades. Systems hold. Most people rely on willpower. They try to decide correctly in the moment. They try to stay disciplined when it matters. That approach breaks.
Decision fatigue sets in.
Attention weakens. Impulse takes over. Focus must become automatic. You have a choice.
You can keep managing attention manually. Or you can build structures that run without debate.
Automatic focus means fewer decisions. Fewer negotiations. Fewer chances to fail. When behavior is automated, emotion has less access. Emotion exploits uncertainty.
It enters during hesitation.
It hijacks during debate.
Automation closes those gaps.
Most mistakes happen when people pause to decide what to do. Not because pausing is wrong. Because nothing is defined. Undefined behavior invites impulse. Defined behavior executes. It's not about motivation. It's about discipline. Discipline becomes powerful when it no longer requires energy. This starts with standards. Standards are rules you do not renegotiate.
They define how attention is used. When distraction appears, the rule holds.
When pressure increases, the rule holds.
When emotion rises, the rule holds. Without standards, everything becomes situational.
Situational control is unstable. You don't need their permission to install standards.
You do not need approval to enforce them internally.
You do not need validation to follow your own rules. Standards must be simple. Complex rules collapse under pressure. Simple rules execute automatically. For example, no response when emotionally elevated. No multitasking during focus. No checking outside defined windows. These are not preferences. They are defaults. Defaults remove negotiation. Negotiation drains attention. That's the key. The less you decide, the more consistent you become. Most people believe discipline means resisting temptation repeatedly. That is inefficient. Resistance costs energy. Automation removes temptation. You do not resist checking. You remove access. You do not fight distraction. You eliminate entry points. It's not about strength. It's about design.
Design beats willpower.
You align your environment with your standards. Notifications off. Devices placed away during focus. Clear start and stop times. This is not rigidity. It is intelligence. Correct behavior should be easy. Incorrect behavior should be inconvenient. This reduces friction. Friction is what breaks discipline. You have a choice. You can keep fighting impulses daily. Or you can remove the conditions that create them. Removal is calmer.
Stillness helps identify where automation is missing.
In quiet moments, you notice where you hesitate. Where you justify. Where you bargain with yourself. Those are points of failure. You do not argue there. You install a rule. Rule replaces debate. Debate drains energy. Rules conserve it. Automation also applies internally. Thought patterns can be automated. When a familiar loop appears, you label it. Then you disengage. No analysis. No explanation. The rule is simple. Do not follow unproductive loops. At first, this requires attention. Over time, it happens faster. Eventually, disengagement becomes automatic. This is training. Most people stop too early. They expect instant results.
Automation is built through repetition.
You repeat the rule until it becomes default. That's the key. Repetition installs identity.
You begin to see yourself as someone who does not negotiate with impulse.
Identity reinforces behavior. Behavior reinforces identity. This loop stabilizes control. Automatic focus also protects you when tired. When energy drops, you fall back to defaults.
If defaults are weak, mistakes follow. If defaults are strong, discipline remains.
This is why automation matters most on bad days. You plan for fatigue, not for peak performance. Planning for strength is naive. Everyone is strong sometimes. Few are disciplined when depleted. Automation protects you then.
You don't need their permission to design for your worst days.
You do not need approval to reduce decision load. Reducing load is intelligent. Load is what collapses attention. Most burnout is not from work. It is from constant deciding. What to do next? What to respond to? What to ignore? Automation reduces this noise. When fewer decisions are required, attention stabilizes. Stable. Attention supports calm. Calm supports accuracy. Accuracy improves outcomes. Everything connects. You have a choice. You can keep relying on effort. Or you can let structure carry you. Effort spikes. Structure holds. This is the difference between short-term control and lasting control. Automatic focus also creates predictability. You know how you will behave. You trust your process. You stop second-guessing. Second-guessing drains energy. Trust restores it. Trust in yourself reduces anxiety. Anxiety comes from unpredictability. Automation creates predictability. Predictability creates calm. Calm allows deeper focus. Deep focus produces results. Results reinforce standards. The loop strengthens. Automatic focus is quiet. No drama. No struggle. Just execution. This is how disciplined people appear calm. They are not fighting constantly. They are following systems. Systems do not argue. They operate. You do not wake up each day asking if you will be focused. You already know the answer. That certainty changes everything. You stop fearing distraction. You stop fearing pressure. You stop fearing emotion. Because you know what will happen. You will pause. You will follow the rule. You will act deliberately. This certainty is power. Not loud power. Functional power. The kind that holds under stress. That's the key. Control that depends on mood is not control. Control that runs automatically is. This chapter is about permanence. Not temporary discipline. Not situational focus. Permanent structure. When focus is automatic, attention stops leaking. Emotion stops hijacking. Pressure stops distorting. The system runs. You are no longer managing yourself constantly. You are operating. You learned how to build stillness before action. Now you have learned how to make that stillness reliable. Next, you must make this way of operating your identity. Not a tool you use. Not a phase you pass through. A standard you live by. Where you place attention is where you live. Not occasionally. Continuously. Most people think identity comes from beliefs, or goals, or personality. It does not. Identity follows attention. What you return to, again and again, becomes familiar. What is familiar becomes comfortable. What is comfortable becomes who you are. That's the key. You become what you look at consistently. You have a choice. You can let attention drift wherever it is pulled. Or you can decide where your life is built. Most people drift. They react to what is loud. They follow what is urgent. They absorb what is nearby. Then they wonder why life feels scattered. Scattered attention creates scattered identity. An unstable focus creates an unstable self. Living where you look means attention is no longer accidental. It is governed. Governed attention creates direction. Direction creates coherence. Coherence creates power. This is not about positive thinking. It is not about optimism. It's not about inspiration. It's about discipline. Discipline decides where attention rests when impulse tries to move it. You don't need their permission to live deliberately. You do not need approval to be selective. You do not owe constant engagement. Most people live externally. Their attention is pulled by events, by opinions, by emotion in the room. They live inside reaction. You do not. You choose a center. That center is what you return to when things pull. Your work. Your values. Your next deliberate action. Returning is the practice. That's the key. Identity is built through return. Every time attention drifts and you bring it back, you reinforce who you are becoming. Not in dramatic moments. In ordinary ones. The phone buzzes. You do not check. You return. A thought tries to hijack focus. You let it pass. You return. Emotion surges. You pause. You return. Each return is a vote. A vote for stability. A vote for discipline. A vote for control. Most people think identity is decided once. It is decided daily. Often hourly. Living where you look also means accepting responsibility. You stop blaming circumstances for your state. You stop blaming people for distraction. You stop blaming mood for inconsistency. You accept that attention is yours to govern. That responsibility is not heavy. It is freeing. Because once attention is yours, power returns. Power does not come from controlling others. It comes from controlling what shapes you. That's the key. Whoever controls your attention controls your direction. You remove that power from the outside. You bring it back inside. Living deliberately does not mean ignoring reality. It means engaging with reality on your terms. You still act. You still respond. You still adapt. But you do so from a chosen position. Not from reflex. Reflex produces regret. Choice produces alignment. Alignment reduces friction. When attention aligns with values, effort decreases. You are no longer fighting yourself. Internal conflict fades when focus is consistent. Most exhaustion is not from work. It is from divided attention. From wanting to be in multiple places mentally. Living where you look removes that division. You are here. Now. On purpose. Stillness supports this way of living. Stillness is where attention recenters. It is not escape. It is calibration. Calibration ensures attention has not drifted too far. You return to stillness regularly. Not as rest. As alignment. In stillness, you notice what has been stealing focus. You correct early. Early correction is calm. Late correction is forceful. You choose calm. Living where you look also means setting standards. Standards define where attention belongs by default. When something competes for focus, the standard decides. Not mood. Not urgency. Standards remove negotiation. Negotiation drains energy.
Energy conserved becomes available for what matters.
That's the key. Standards protect identity. Without standards, identity is rewritten by whatever appears. With standards, identity holds under pressure. Pressure does not define you. Attention does.
Living this way changes how you move through the world.
You speak less, but with clarity. You react less, but with precision.
You act less often, but more effectively.
This is not withdrawal. It is efficiency. You stop scattering energy. Scattered energy produces noise.
Focused energy produces results.
Results reinforce identity. The loop strengthens. You will notice something important. Life does not become easier, but it becomes simpler. Fewer internal arguments. Fewer emotional swings. Fewer regrets. Not because you avoid difficulty, because you meet it with stable attention. Stability is the advantage. Others escalate. You stabilize. Others chase urgency. You maintain direction. Others react to the moment. You act from standard. This creates quiet authority. Not authority over others. Authority over yourself. Self-governance is power. You don't need their permission to govern yourself. You do not need validation to hold focus. You do not need applause to stay disciplined. Discipline is private. Its effects are public.
Living where you look also means long-term thinking. You understand that attention compounds.
Small daily choices shape months. Months shape years. Years shape life. You stop making decisions only for relief. You make them for direction. Direction outlasts comfort. Comfort fades quickly. Direction accumulates. That's the key. Short-term relief weakens long-term control. Long-term direction stabilizes everything. You choose direction. You choose where attention rests during discomfort. During boredom. During pressure. These moments matter most.
Anyone can focus when conditions are ideal. Few can focus when conditions resist.
Those few control outcomes. You become one of them by consistency. Not intensity. Consistency. You do not need perfection. You need return. Each return matters. You will fail sometimes. Attention will drift. That is normal. The discipline is noticing and returning. No self-criticism. No drama. Correction is quiet. Quiet correction builds reliability. Reliability builds trust. Trust in yourself changes how you feel. You stop fearing distraction. You stop fearing emotion. You stop fearing pressure. Because you know the process. Pause. Observe. Return. This process defines the power of attention. Not as an idea. As a way of living. This book has shown you the mechanics. Attention determines behavior.
Behavior trains the nervous system.
The nervous system shapes identity. Identity drives outcomes. You learn how to stop giving attention away. How to choose what enters. How to silence noise. How to hold focus deliberately. How to detach from emotional pull. How to eliminate fragmentation. How to build stillness before action. How to make focus automatic. Now comes the final step. Living it. Not when convenient. Not when motivated. Always. Where you place attention is where your life forms. Decide deliberately. Live where you look. This is not motivation. It is alignment. And alignment is power. Attention is not abstract.
It is practical power.
Every day, you are training it. Either deliberately or by default. Distraction weakens you quietly. Discipline strengthens you quietly. You do not need more intensity. You need more control. Guard what you look at. Limit what enters your mind. Pause before you react. Attention is finite. Spend it intentionally.
From this point forward, enforce standards.
Reduce noise. Hold focus. Choose stillness before action. Where your attention goes, your life follows. Make sure it goes where you decide.